Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. So, hey sister, how you doing?
Hey, sister, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing fantastic, and we are super excited tonight because we have a very special guest with us, one of my former colleagues, but still a colleague because, once you come together, you kind of stay together. That's how it works.
Yep.
Mr. Michael O'Brien, he currently is let me get this correct, Chief Shift Officer for Peloton Coaching and Consulting. But we have a long history that goes back, and I'll tell you guys more about that after we get out of Hot Topics. But Michael, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you both for having me. I'm totally stoked to have this conversation. I'm ready.
Yes, we are excited and stoked to have you too. And so, in true Hey Sister fashion, guys, we have to start off with a few hot topics tonight. So, I don't know about you, but I think the hottest topic of all hot topics on right now is impeachment. Oh, sister, what do you
Yes.
think about the impeachment talk and the House Democrats have decided to pursue impeachment proceedings, and I don't even know where to go with that one right now. What do you think about that?
I don't know where to go either. At this point, I don't know. It's like, is it a little, too little, too late? We have an election coming up next year, and there are a number of people who believe, hey, let the process play itself out and see what happens. And it's interesting because I'm just like, it, the whistleblower was very brave, and I appreciate him or her coming out and finally saying, look, enough is enough. But at the end of the day, none of this is surprising, right? Foolery has been taking place since this gentleman found himself in the White House. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like, for personally, my preference is that he goes to jail, not be impeached.
Mm.
That he is punished for crimes that he's committed, not that he goes to jail. But that's my personal, belief. And maybe the idea is, if we impeach him and get him out of office, then he can be tried for various crimes. But that's
So
kind
here's
of my
the funny
thoughts.
thing: when you look up the word impeachment, so this is why we all need to go back and take a high school civics class, right? Because impeachment doesn't mean anything other than calling out a wrongdoing.
Hmm.
It's in doing an investigation to call out a wrongdoing. Then, if they file articles of impeachment, then the Senate would hold a trial,
Hmm.
right? And so we haven't even gotten to that part. So I think people are just losing their mind over nothing. Congress is doing their job. You're supposed to investigate claims of wrongdoing. So I just think people need to get over it. Don't get so caught up in the buzzwords, but look at the substance. I don't know, Michael, what do you have? I know, since I know him well, I know he is very involved in political thought. So what do you think about that, Michael?
All right. So first of all, when are we going to not be surprised by how surprising his behavior is? Because we all knew, like, I'm up here in New Jersey outside of New York. So he is the man that the system voted in, right?
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm really surprised by how surprised we get with every little act that he's done over the last almost 3 years, right? So I'm like, take a breath. And I think some of it is just a 24/7 news media cycle. You got to fill the air. So we're going to talk about things that may not be things that you need to talk about. So that's one. So two, I think you have to go to some impeachment inquiry or an impeachment findings. I think Speaker Pelosi is doing the right thing just for the sake of constitutional hygiene, if you will.
Mhm.
So, and it also does put the Senate and the senators on notice. Which way are you going to go? And, there's got to be a vote. And then we're going to see, are there 20 Republicans that will, do what's right by country or right by themselves? And I think that will all be very enlightening. But I do worry that we're going to this thing's going to suck up all the oxygen. And we have, I think the Democratic Party has a big job ahead of it, picking who is going to represent the Democratic Party in the election next year, because you do have sort of these two choices of incremental change and progressive change, and big plans that all seem to think like we're going to have our cake and eat it too without paying anything extra. Right. So what plan do we want? And I think what we run the risk of, and I think it's just the nature of the situation, is that we lose sight of who's running. Hopefully we'll wake up by the time Iowa comes and we can, pick the right candidate to move forward. But I think we live in crazy times, and I think we're creating history. But I think this election is really around who do we want to be as a country.
I guess that is a good question. Who do we want to be as a country? So we had a comment here that said, I'm wondering how far will Congress go? I think we're all kind of wondering, wait and see what's going to happen. How far will they go in this process? But stay tuned. That's all we can say, right? Stay tuned.
I mean, if we've seen, if history repeats itself, let's be honest, on both sides, Congress isn't going to go that far. I mean, other than Nixon, and he wasn't impeached, right? He
was gone before he was
he was impeached. So we've never done this.
Looks like Clinton.
Bill Clinton, Andrew Johnson.
But then the vote didn't. The Senate didn't vote to impeach him.
Yeah, they did.
So,
they impeached him. They just didn't remove him from office.
Yeah. Didn't remove. Okay, sorry.
I think we're not going to remove. I don't.
He won't be removed from office.
I doubt it. I think the only thing that can remove him from office is the election. So
exactly.
Yeah. That's my guess. So.
Well, another hot topic tonight we're going to get to because one of our favorite shows, and y'all know right now, actually, this is kind of like a good era of television because they actually have some good quality, thought-provoking programming. But one of our favorite shows, This Is Us, returned. Michael, I'm not sure if you even watched This Is Us.
I have not even seen. I feel like I'm totally out of pop culture. I know the show rocks because everyone talks about it, but you're also talking to someone tonight who's never really seen a Game of Thrones episode, and I don't have paid cable HBO and all that stuff. So, and I know This Is Us is on one of the regular channels, but I don't know which regular channel it's on.
You remember regular TV? What happened to regular TV?
But I will say this.
Our broadcast.
Not to bring us down a rabbit hole, but when my daughters are around during the summer, I used to watch The Bachelor with them. So that was
your guilty pleasure,
which is disturbing TV. But I don't want to take you off your game and talking about This Is Us because I think that's more important than The Bachelor.
Oh, wow. Well, for those of you who watch This Is Us, I know some of you are in. I have a few of you on the watch party watching, and I see others who are on live with us now. We have another one. Michael, I haven't watched Game of Thrones either. So you are not alone, my friend.
Thank you, Jody.
Well, just so you know, Michael, I tried really hard, and I got up to season 4, but then the last season came and happened, and all the diehards, my sister included, they were so disappointed with the last season in the last episode that I was like, well, hell, it just doesn't even make sense for me to catch up now. I just don't even need to finish. I already know it's going to be a letdown.
Yep.
Well, at any rate, This Is Us. New episode, new season, and all I know is way too many new characters in that first episode. I know they kind of closed the circle for us in the last 5 minutes of the show, but I was feeling a little disturbed. I was feeling a little
Really?
disturbed. I was really feeling disturbed because I was like, okay, you're introducing way too many people, and I just wanted to go. I wanted to see Beth and Randall. I wanted to see my folks. So
Interesting. Interesting. Well, I had a completely different take on it. I think the writing on This Is Us is superb. And as a writer, I was just fascinated because I wanted to see how are y'all gonna pull this together. And one of my favorite, movies is Crash, right?
mhm.
And
Oh.
so I always, Michael, you've seen Crash.
Oh, Crash is good.
And one of the things that I've always loved about Crash is because it's very reminiscent of our lives. Day to day, we encounter so many people and we never know how these interactions are going to change our lives. So when This Is Us started, that was what, Beth was talking about in her voiceover that, not Beth, I'm sorry. What's the mom's name? Mandy Moore's
Rebecca.
character, Rebecca. What Rebecca was talking about in the voiceover, like you meet people at different times in your life and you never know how they're going to impact you. So I was sitting there like with bated breath trying to figure out how are all these people connected to the Pearsons. And
And they're all connected.
they're all connected.
Oh. So that's the premise of the show. This sounds like a cool show. This is like my cup of tea. So when is it on? So
It's on Tuesday nights, but we're in the third season, is it now?
This
Or fourth?
is season 4.
Season 4.
Wow.
So you will have to catch up. I mean, you could literally start watching from last night, but you would want to catch up and see the past episodes.
All
But
right.
I thought it was amazing that they try. Okay, so this is the other thing you need to know, Michael, if you're going to embark on this.
Okay.
The writers on This Is Us attempt to make you cry every episode.
That's what I've heard. Like every episode, they're crying.
Yeah, so for the first 2 seasons, like nonstop, it was waterworks. I think by season 3, I kind of got the hang of it. But man, little baby Jack. That's all I'm gonna say. Little baby Jack.
Well, I'm man enough to say I cry at movies. I cry at shows. I sometimes pretend it's the allergies are acting up, but I'm no pride. I will I'll bring out the Kleenex. So
Yes.
I'll choked
Check
up.
it out.
Well, I will say this: if there is a show that you would want to venture into, that you would want to invest time into, like going back and watching a few seasons, This Is Us is one of those shows. Like there's some shows like I still haven't watched it. You're like, I can wait on that. You can wait. This is one that it's worth the investment.
All right, cool. All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it on my list, and then I will report back
Yes.
how many tissue boxes I went through.
All right.
We'll rate my satisfaction on the buildup of cleanup.
Okay.
Well, everybody, thank you guys for indulging us in our hot topics tonight. We sincerely appreciate it. But tonight is a more of a serious conversation that we want to have, and I'm really excited to have Michael here. So, got to do a little bit of a history, let you guys know how we're connected, and then what brought this all together. So, as you know, I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 12 years with one organization, and Michael O'Brien and that's where we met. And I think, were you the regional Northeast region director when I started as a sales rep? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So when you started as a rep, I was a regional director, and then moved my position around a couple times.
Yeah, so then he moved on and became a vice president of sales and marketing. And that's where we had a lot of interaction. And when I was promoted to a district manager, he was one of the people who I had to interview with, come through to receive that promotion. And so Michael and I have known each other, I guess it's about 13, 14 years now. And one of the things that I've admired about Michael is he's very thoughtful, introspective, and really a lifelong learner. And one of the things that makes him a great coach and consultant as well. But he always took time to invest and cultivate women leaders in the organization. And one of the things he has done diligently, and I think he's even on the local board there now, is participate in the Healthcare Business Women's Association annual conference. And he's been a mentor with that organization. And he would be one of maybe two men in this entire room of women. And he made a conscious effort to put himself in that position. And I remember at probably one of our last meetings that we had as a sales leadership team, and we had our CFO present as well, and we're having some conversation, and he made a plea to the other men in the room to put themselves in a situation where they're minority, specifically the white men in the room. And the majority of my management and leadership colleagues were white men. And I could see the tension in their face and their body language when he said it. But he always was brave enough to be honest and to challenge norms. And so that is one of the reasons why I wanted to have Michael here tonight with us to have this conversation. So we all hear the buzzwords: diversity, inclusion, allies, unconscious bias. We are in the midst of cancel culture because everybody's getting canceled everywhere. But I wanted to have a real honest conversation about how do we live this, and how do we actually have honest conversations, and then what can we do? And I know it's not really necessarily our responsibility as the minority in the room to always be doing, because I think we feel like we take on the burden of always doing stuff to fix this problem. And that's one of the reasons why I knew Michael would be brave enough to have the honest conversation and honest dialogue about that. And so I wanted to have him on tonight. And so thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. And that story that you shared, good memory, by the way. So I share that story in my blog post this week.
Mm-hmm.
I'll post it on Facebook here tomorrow or Tuesday and LinkedIn, but it went out on email today and it's on YouTube. So that's that story where I felt, we didn't have this term back in 2006 because that story dates back to 2006. Now we would say, well, I felt like the only in the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I didn't, again, we didn't have that term, but that's how I felt. And that was a life altering, leadership altering experience, because as a white guy, you're in the majority most of the time, unless you put yourself in the minority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I say that as someone who, I had a roommate who is an Alpha Phi. And so I went to a couple of his fraternity parties. So, but even then, where I went to school, it was sort of a mixture. That one meeting, I definitely felt it more acutely than ever before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, how did you get the courage to even do that? Because most men would not have even, and they still don't, right? Because I've been to HBA's conference and a few of them, and even on the local level, most men don't have the courage to sit in a room full of women. So how did you get that courage?
Well, it's funny. We had a meeting actually yesterday, a regional leadership meeting, and there are probably like 20 people in the room, 19 women and me. And so I've grown comfortable over time. I think with like anything that can help you get past the resistance, and the inertia to like step into something new, you have to have a purpose that's bigger than who you are. And so for me, like my journey with male allyship started when my daughters were born. Now, we didn't call it male allyship. Like we've called it like advocating for women and sponsoring women. And now it's male allyship. So, and to be honest, I don't really give a crap what we call it. Like it's sort of like, I'm going to call them stupid labels. I rather think about like, what's the behavior we really need to see. And so when my daughters were born, my journey into this work was very selfish, to be honest. It was like, I want to make their world better, right? So when you know, at the birth of your kids, your children, male or female, boy or girl, it's like, whoa, how cool is life?
Mhm.
But there's something, you know, I will say there's something about dads and daughters that's something that's it's really hard for me to describe. And so when they were born, I was like, I need to do things that like I had female mentors early in my career, so I did have, but I didn't put any sweat equity into making it better for female leaders early in my career, if I'm going to be really honest. So I got the benefit of it, but I didn't really give back. But when they were born, Elle was born in 1997 and Grady was born in the year 2000. I was like, wow, I have something bigger. I'm going to change their world. So initially it started, I want to help them, very sort of myopic on my family and my girls. And then it evolved to joining the HBA because I got inspired at one of their meetings. And then I went to the annual conference. And then I made that transition from, hey, I'm doing it for my daughters to this is really smart to do as a business leader because it's good for business. And then current day, and I reached this point years ago, it's just good one human being to another. It's like to say, hey, we're all like, hey, we're all created equal. And so they're empty words unless you have the right behavior. And so, and I say this as not the spokesperson for all white guys, and as someone who's not perfect at this at all moments in time. But I try to do a little bit better each day to create, you know, an environment where there's a greater sense of belonging.
Mhm.
Because
Wow.
I think we need that today. I think there's a lot of connection, but there's a lot of isolation and loneliness. And if I can, in my small way, make that difference, then I think I think I have the responsibility to do it. As someone who is born as a white guy, I have some privilege, and I think it goes back to Kennedy, right? To whom much is given, much is much is expected. So,
Mhm.
and I think I have that responsibility.
Mhm. Well, I appreciate you saying that. We have a dad too, and who has two daughters. I think he he too would say that that is a special and unique relationship with dad and daughters. And yeah, so you know we're all struggling with this a bit, right? I think even for me and my role being promoted, there was an extra sense of pressure that I felt, um, and it was tough, and feeling alone, and so and I never felt like I could have that honest conversation about um being a black woman district manager, and in some of the places where I had to go into in Florida, even some of the representatives who I worked with whose cars I had to sit in, who knew they were not happy because of how I came into this world, that I was then leading them.
Oh,
uh,
yeah. No, yeah, you know, I look back at your career as a leader and your evolution is like you had to be very tough and resilient, and you know, you had to have perseverance. And you know, Michelle, the one thing that Michelle and I've talked about is, so when I interviewed Michelle, one of our colleagues, for those, I don't want to mention her last name because I don't necessarily want to
mhm,
do that without her permission, but I remember in the final interview she was interviewing for the regional director role, and she's African American woman. And I said, why are you showing up this way? Because she had this reputation of being a little sort of could be cold, maybe a little bit icy, stern. And she's like, listen, as a double minority, I feel like I have to do like 200% better than everyone else. And so I want to make sure that everything is perfect because I don't want to leave any opening for any criticism. And, you know, and so it was such a healthy conversation. I don't know if I would have been able to ask her that question without some of the other work, the seeds that were planted earlier. But
mhm,
that was a big aha that really allowed her to, one, she got the job, but also allowed her to sort of, you know, sort of breathe into it and find her true personality in the job, because she knew she was going to get into an environment where she was going to be supported to be truly who she was and who she is.
Mhm. Okay. Sister, what question do you have?
I don't know where to even begin. Well, first, again, thank you very much for joining us. I think, as we talked about in the pre-show, I know that you're not the representative for all white guys or white people in America or any of that, but I would be remiss if in this moment I did not ask what the hell is going on with white guys, because, we're seeing a lot of things happen, with violence in the country. And as I was telling you, I am currently doing a temporary assignment in a global diversity and inclusion role. And in doing so, I know it seems like a lot of white men have felt that they have been excluded from this diversity and inclusion conversation. And as a result, I even had a conversation with one of my really good friends who mentioned that, her boss, a white man, very senior position, he made a comment saying that he felt like he has a target on his back now as a white man. And now this is somebody who is in like senior vice president level of a company. And
Major
so,
corporation.
and I'm like, and you feel like you have a target on your back. Wow, that's very intriguing to me, particularly since, as far as where I sit, most CEOs are still white men. Most boards of directors are still white men. Most people in the C-suite are still white men in Fortune 500 companies. So I'm just curious, like, what's going on, and why do they feel? Why are white men feeling excluded from the diversity and inclusion conversation when it's obviously a choice, if you ask me?
Yeah, so that's a great question. How long are we going to be together tonight? So yeah. So I would say the one thing that comes up, and you sort of referenced it, is, and before I share what that is, I'm going to go back, because a lot of people are like, hey, listen, the white guy's had it good for a long time, right? So if he's a little uncomfortable, so be it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is an attitude to take. But I do think there is a great percentage, one, that's not aware, right? They just don't have the awareness. We're coming up, as we flip the calendar into October, we're going to, look back at 2 years since Me Too. And I think it was Cosmo and GQ did a study and asked about, I think, 1,000 men. And it was really like eye-opening how few men really knew about Me Too. And so we didn't hit close to 80 or 90%. So I think there's still an awareness problem. I do think there's a group of men who are scared, going back to primal emotions. Thoughts drive emotions, emotions drive behavior, and they're scared and they just don't know what to do. So a lot of times what we first say is usually a mask, because we got a gooey center too, but a lot of times we walk around with a lot of bravado. We walk around with our body armor. We may say things as a way to protect what's at the core issue. So I think there's a lot of, because things have shifted. And so, a lot of white guys grew up with a certain script. Hey, Bobby. Hey, James. Hey, Michael. This is how life goes. And you get to a certain point in your career. Because I think it is somewhat, I think we're moving the needle when it comes to different generations. But when you look at maybe older Gen X, maybe the baby boomers are still in the workplace. So they're at this, call it the pinnacle of their career, and they want to hang on to get to retirement. And the rules have changed for the better. About time the rules have changed, because one rule that we haven't valued enough is that competence would rule our decision making as opposed to bias. And so you hear you hear a lot of like, well, I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll just maybe I'll stop having one-on-ones with my female direct reports. I'll do it in the cafeteria, or and changing their behavior in radical ways, because I think there's some emotion there that's just impacting their judgment, and they don't necessarily know how to have the conversation with others or bring up some of the fears, the vulnerability, if you will, around like, hey, I just don't know, and I want to be vulnerable right now so we can explore it. So I hold it back, I put on my body armor, and I go in and I point the finger at you in HR for doing this to me, right? It's an external locus of focus around, like, instead of like taking responsibility to lean into the conversation, I'm going to point the finger and say, well, you're excluding me. And I think a lot of it is body armor. It's a mask. So I think some of that is happening. We can break through that, but I think that's in large part what's happening. And then there's also, I'll give you a last one, is I think there's some men of a certain age who are like, yeah, I know, I have awareness, and maybe I don't feel like there's a target on my back, but you know what? I just don't give a shit, because I'm going to retire soon, or I'm going to be dead. Right? We talked about it before the show started, like climate change, different topic. But like, Miami's going to go floating off into the Atlantic, but you know what? I won't be around, so I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm not going to change my behavior. And I think there's some men who are like, hey, I'm almost done. I'll let the other generation make this change happen, which I think is so irresponsible, because they're at high levels in their company and they don't have to be the solution, but they can, because of their influence and status, they can create a lot of great conversations to leave a much more powerful legacy. And so, so I think some of that's what's going on.
And then what about on the other spectrum? I know part of Christina's question is about, right now also, but there even this generation of even younger white men, and you're like, who's indoctrinated you? Like, where are you getting this sense of pressure from? That it's like, I'm baffled by it, actually.
I think it's, hey, we learn from our elders. We learn from society, and there are probably a lot of fathers for this problem when it comes to maybe how we're raising boys, and how they go through school, and also how girls go through school. But I think here's the big thing. I think that some men think this is a lose-lose, right? So all this is happening, everyone's advancing, and I'm not. But my belief is that this can be a win-win as we make the room bigger, the tent bigger. We bring more diversity across many fronts to the decision-making tables of the world, because then and only then we really represent those people who we serve, because we should be as diverse in corporations as the people we're trying to serve, sell to, what have you. So it doesn't have to be a lose. It can be a win-win. Now, here's the caveat. If you don't have game, you will lose. And the thing is that that's been true since the beginning of time, that if you don't change, if you don't evolve, then one day you will be less remarkable or irrelevant. And I think some of those men who haven't worked on their game are in particular very scared.
So I guess my question is, and you're right, it shouldn't be lose-lose. It all should be win. And I am always an advocate that whoever you serve, your customers, your viewers, your whatever they are, that your work, the people who sell should be representative of your customer base. The people who are leading your organization should be reflective of the demographic that they're serving. So I definitely agree with that point. I just number one, okay, like the numbers just don't show this trend of white guys losing. So I guess that's why I'm still struck by that being a concern.
Yeah.
That aside, when it comes to creating diversity, or as one of my favorite writers, Shonda Rhimes, would say, normalcy, right? Because
Mhm.
we don't live in a world that everybody looks the same, everybody has the same beliefs, everybody went to the same colleges, everybody grew up in the same region of the country. So as we are creating this sense of normalcy, how much should executive compensation be tied to that leaning in, that sponsorship, that allyship?
Well, I think I don't know what the percentage is, and we can debate the percentages, but it should be part of the equation or part of the math. Right now, there's was an article in the New York Times today about some CEOs who just got pushed out. The leader of WeWorks got pushed out, and so in today's world where the economy has been going pretty strongly since we recovered from the big recession, and you just look at success through the lens of stock price. A lot of CEOs or a lot of companies are doing quite well. I think we have to start measuring different things, and this is one of the things that we measure. I think Jody, I see in the comments, I think D&I can be just the flavor of the month, right? So we've had different labels for this over time, and I see some companies changing the language from D&I to belonging, which I think, as I mentioned earlier, is well needed. So we have to measure what we want out of our companies, and I think this is smart to do as a business. And Dimitri and I came from healthcare, so I've still been flabbergasted by the lack of progress of getting women to the C-suite level, because most women serve as a chief medical officer in their homes.
Mhm.
Like if their kids have a boo-boo or get sick, still to this day, because of our perspectives or beliefs on who takes care of kids and who takes care of elders, that it's the mom, the female executive, making the buying decisions. And so it's just, forget about the human to human being thing that I'm on. It's just good for business to have your customer be in the room where the decisions are happening, and not get too caught up into some of the labels we use. We're looking for distinct behavior, and compensation can drive behavior when there's enough meat to that, or enough at stake. And I think we've seen it happen countless times in many industries, and I think it would work here for CEOs and actually senior executives. Put more emphasis on that, and then you could see a change in behavior.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is because very often we have metrics that are based on, okay, increase hiring of minorities or women, and yet those women and minorities hit a ceiling usually at the director level. So, or it's, if you have in my area tech, where you want to have more technical women and underrepresented minorities. But then once you hit that number, whatever that magic number happens to be, then people slide back into their old behaviors. And so that was where the question was coming from. How do we tie it to a sort of executive compensation? Because quite frankly, to your point, I think money is a motivator for a lot of people. And as companies are doing financially well, I do think that in order to see more progress, it has to be tied to something that is
Tangible.
I don't know, tangible, and that it hits them, in a place that matters. Because if you are a if you're a white male you know, it and you're surrounded. I mean, we know like in hiring, we typically hire people who look like us because that's who we're comfortable with. And that's across the board. But if you know that it's going to be tied to your compensation, I don't want you to go out and just hire anybody, because that's another part of the dynamic, right? When very often when a black woman is hired, or an Asian man is hired, or something like that, it's, oh, we had to check a quota box, and
Yeah.
that's why, you know, those metrics and stuff get a little tricky. But I think tying it to compensation is important. Sister, I'm going to let you ask the next question. I have others, but you can ask the next question.
No, I mean, I think this is a really good conversation. And so like even like so the outside of the corporate realm, because I'm with you, is this is like a human thing. Like we have to start really even earlier in the equation. So how do you because you have daughters and now they're college aged women, so they're not babies anymore. They were babies. But how do you make a conscious effort to break down these, well, because truth is we still live very segregatedly.
Yeah.
Our schools are still very segregated. Many people's exposure is through pop culture and or TV and music. And so I watch TV all the time and I hear people talking about Black families. And I'm like, this is none of the Black people that I know. It's like, most of the people I know did go to college.
Yeah.
Even people who went later in life, most of the people I know, they got some form of secondary education. Most of the people I know had two parents. Now, some of those parents are divorced. Some of them had toxic environments, but all the white people I know had similar kind of upbringing. It's like, I just don't know where, when, I watch the news, I see things and they talk about, oh, well, these Black boys in school, it's because they don't have dads. And I'm like, it's not because but if a white kid does something that's because of a video game, I'm like, I'm confused as to how we just start making these declarations and doing things, and it's like we're not even, who are you around, like who are even people who are statisticians. Again, when you do statistics, it's based on the environment you're in. When you do studies, if you bring bias into it, it's going to be there. So how do we start even just in our own lives?
So one of the things I like to talk about, Dimitri, this is like who's in your peloton. I use it as a metaphor. It's a cycling term, but I use it as a metaphor for your personal board of directors, or just your network, your tribe, your community, what have you. And I think it's important to take stock in, like, who are you spending the most time with, and how diverse are they? I mean, it goes beyond gender and skin color. It's just thought too. And if everyone's looking like you across like many domains, then it's probably good to sort of get outside the comfort zone a bit and go exploring, and start having like one by one conversations where you can say, hey, like, listen, like, can we talk about this, whatever topic thing? Can we, or maybe it's just we talked about impeachment earlier. Like, maybe you go have a conversation with someone who sees it a completely different way. Maybe voted for the president, and we voted for someone else, and you start to say, hey, like, I really would love to have a conversation where we can discover and explore with each other, as opposed to trying to win the conversation. Because I think what happens is, like, we're looking for like these little easy sound bites because we don't want to go deep. And we have found ourselves, I think, over the last, I'll call it the last decade, in this mindset where we have to win every conversation. It's like feeds our addiction to being right, as opposed to just like, hey, let's just explore and let's like try to learn and get some different perspectives on what's happening. And we don't have to agree with them. It's a good chance to just sort of connect. Just like, some people may have heard me say, like, men are scared. And I think many men are scared. And there are probably people who listen and be like, that's rubbish. And that's certainly a takeaway, but we can sort of pull on that thread a little bit further and say, okay, well, what are they scared about? And sometimes when we're scared, it's very irrational. And it is. I would say it's irrational. But we have to, like, keep on going into the conversation and not look for flavors of the month. And I think we tend to do that, like, you know, because this takes like tenacity to stay in it when it's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And usually what we want to do is we want to run back to what's comfortable, you know, serve our human nature in a lot of ways.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that. So I'll speak for myself. So as me as a Black woman, what I have found and in my experience is that, you know, let me speak for it's exhausting because I find that I'm the one who is always trying to, and I think it also is part of how we're socialized, right? To save everybody in the room, to, like, you know, kind of let them off the hook of being uncomfortable. And that gets exhausting. So by the time we get home, it's like, bump that. I'm
Yeah.
done with all of y'all,
Yeah.
right, at this point in time, right? And so that has been some of my experience as a woman of color, going into different places and spaces, and showing up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and doing, you know, the best to be my authentic self, and then still like, man, I just can't. I can't do much more. You know.
Yeah, I can only appreciate how exhausting it is, and I think that's one of the things. Like, as a guy, I don't think we'll ever truly feel what it feels like to, well, obviously be a woman who, like, in the natural tendency of like serve, and then a woman of color, just the other levels of complexity on top of that. Like, I don't, you know, as a guy, I don't have to burn calories thinking about that. It's
Mm-hmm.
less exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, for us guys, it would just be good to say, you know what, hey, I recognize that, right? And so we're gonna own that, as opposed to trying to deny that or try to like be like, well, my upbringing was really tough and the other kids across town had it easy.
Right.
It's just like, hey, like, relatively speaking, like, we don't have to burn calories on that stuff. It's less exhausting. And so we're going to own that. So we get a little bit of we get a little bit or a lot of it of a head start. And then it's like, okay, so we have awareness, and then we have acceptance for, hey, it's like this. Now we can get into action that's meaningful. You know, and that's sort of where I'm at. So it's like, I started this when Ellen Grady were born. They're 18 and 21, as you mentioned, Dimitri. They're women now. Mm-hmm. And I am embarrassed by how little progress we've made. And I'm embarrassed, but I'm ever more committed to trying to move the needle forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done the evaluating my network exercise a number of times. And by far, I largely have people who are Black and people who are usually around the same level as I am, who are, make up the bulk of my network. That said, to Demetria's point about the exhaustion that comes with who we have to be in the workplace as Black women versus who we have to be at home. And let's face it, people always say, companies are good for saying, "Ooh, bring your authentic self to work." But quite frankly, my authentic self cusses like a sailor. I can't bring my authentic self to work. My authentic self thinks that the person who's leading the country is an idiot. I can't bring that to work. And so when people say, "Oh, you have the flexibility to bring your authentic self to work," number one, I think it's a crock. But the other piece that I was going to add to that is, in the same way I believe that racism is not going to be solved by the people who are being discriminated against or who are feeling oppression, I kind of feel like the onus for the diversity and inclusion and reaching out sort of conversation is on the other person. So women have a very different experience in the workplace than men. It's the onus of, to me, the man to be the one to reach out to the woman and not the woman to have to actively seek the man out. Um, Black people have a very different experience than white people in the workplace. I feel like the onus should be on the white people to reach out to the Black people. A person who is in the LGBTQ community has a very different experience in the workplace than someone who is considered straight or heterosexual. It's on the straight and heterosexual people to then reach out. Why is that not understood, I guess, fundamentally? And you're saying you're doing the work, and I believe that there are others who are doing the work, but very often when you go back to evaluating that network, the reason why most people have people at their same level and who look like them is because it feels comfortable. It's uncomfortable for us to then have to reach out to somebody who doesn't look like us, and even though we have a lot of things in common, it doesn't always feel that way.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I'd love to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah. So
Is the onus on that other person?
Like there's a lot of goodness in what, like, in the question. So one, I would say, like, yeah, when I look at my own Peloton, it's like it's not a kaleidoscope of different colors, right? And so so it's primarily white, but there is diversity in there. And to your point about trying to bring our true selves, our authentic selves to work, is like, yes, to a point, right? So I remember back in the day when Demetria would have her hair out, like it would be like you would think like Rome was burning or something. It was crazy. Like the brouhaha, like, did you see her hair? Like, and you could have a guy with like a bad comb over, and I'm like, yeah, did you see his? I'm like, that's worse, right? So, so I think as far as like the onus or where the accountability stands, it's just not taught, right? So that's and I think it needs to be. I think one of the things I shared last week at a talk is around accountability is a lot of times in most companies, diversity and inclusion and the metrics are usually like an HR thing where HR comes to the business and say, hey, you guys got to pay attention to this. But to really make change is like, you as the business owner, wherever business function you happen to be in, it could be legal team or sales and marketing or whatever, is like we own it just as much as D&I or just as much as HR. And I have the responsibility of starting the conversation or being the first hand that reaches out to create a connection. But that's not taught, right? That's not talked about, because it's like, and this is, some of the wonkiness in the whole thing is, because a lot of times we developed affinity groups. Well, within HBA, we have affinity groups, and a lot of companies, we have affinity groups. And then the affinity groups almost, in a lot of circles, behave like these silos. And, the men, like call them white men, can I go to those things? Like, I don't have a white male affinity group, right? It gets into that. But even the early days of my experience with the HBA, and I've been a member since 2003, I think the HBA was somewhat conflicted in terms of like, well, do they just want to be a safe space for women to meet and greet and network? Or do we want to bring men into the conversation? It's my belief that men have to be part of the conversation. It's not for us guys to go around like Superman, just solve the problem, right? But we have to be part of the solution. We have to be part of the conversation because, Chris, as you mentioned, men still dominate the upper echelons of every company. They're making decisions. So we have to have a conversation together if we're going to bring about change. If we're all just hanging out in our affinity groups, sharing data about how big the gap is, whatever the gap may be that we're talking about,
right?
It's akin to preaching to the choir, right? And we don't make enough change. So we have to figure out a way where we're having this conversation. And for folks born with some privilege, is to say, hey, I have a responsibility to start the conversation. And set the ground rules for what that conversation looks like, to say, hey, it's uncomfortable, right? Because sometimes we just don't know what to say, and we don't want to say the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of guys are curious, and they're like, I just don't know what to ask, or I just don't know what to do. A lot of guys call me up and say, hey, I want to get involved, but what do I do? And I said, you know what? The first thing you can do is sign up,
Show up.
come to a meeting, and I want you to just listen. I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to listen. Just start there. And the next meeting you come up, and you come out again, and maybe you ask some questions. So you don't have to talk right away,
Right.
just listen. So
Yeah.
Well,
We have a
I will
comment.
say,
Oh,
go
I was
ahead,
going
go
to
ahead,
just show
Davicia.
that comment here from Aaron. It says, this is where I believe that there is a lack of awareness. They don't know that they should have any ownership for the way that we feel.
yeah,
Mm.
I agree with Aaron.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I was gonna.
it's the empathy piece, right?
But Michael, you said something about people not knowing what to say. And you know what? Part of me believes that is a little bit of a cop out,
Cop out.
kind of cop out, kind of cowardly, because when you genuinely don't know what to say, and if I mean, so and I can speak for myself right now. And in the and we've had a conversation. We had someone on to talk about this, the whole cisgender and non-binary, and what does that mean, and ally, and this and that, and there's LGBTQ plus, and so what is all the plus, all the alphabet soup that follows that, and I admittedly am in a learning curve there, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all very new, and so we have to be allowed to learn. We have to be allowed to, like, screw it up, to say the wrong thing. And if I do offend, be genuine and sincere. And you know what? I did blow that. I didn't realize that I was even blowing it at the time, because I just legitimately didn't know. I think there's a difference. Like I say all the time, ignorance is normal. Like, ignorance can also be cured by learning. Now, stupidity is a choice, right? And so that's where the behavior piece comes in. So if you choose to be willfully and continue to repeat behavior, then you're on the stupid side. That's not an ignorant side, because once you've been taught, you have to make a conscious effort.
Agreed. I do think, I think the whole, like, I don't know what to ask can be a cop out. Remember, I think and I'm not sure if we talked about it in the pre-show or just in the last hour, but a lot of times what some of us guys say, the first thing is really the mask. It's like what we say to sort of deflect. So I think that's very true. That it can be a cop out for many people, and also just like just trying to step into more of the value of, like, I don't know, and I want to be curious, and if I get it wrong, we can solve this, we can get through this. And for a lot of high level leaders, they've been right most of their career, or at least they've perceived they've been right. There's many right answers, right? So there's a lot of ways to run a company, and there's all that jazz like that. But so if you've had a upbringing where you've been right, and you keep on going up and up and up and up and up, I think over time that muscle that says, hey, I'm going to be comfortable being wrong, atrophies. And again, poor excuse. I think what we need to do, recruiters are, sort of our better angels, right? To say, hey, you know what? Here's a moment. We are living, I really do believe we are living through a time where we're creating history. Going back to, who do we want to be? And what legacy do I want to leave behind? And going back to, like, having a purpose or a mission or a vision or whatever that's bigger than who you are. I think it helps us get past some of this initial resistance and have those conversations that may feel a little uncomfortable. And, the stuff that we did back when we used to work together, our step level meetings, they were purposely designed So you all at your level could have conversations with your boss's boss that were sometimes uncomfortable, and no one got fired. In fact, most of you all got promoted, and it was okay. And I think we have to do more of that. So, my 2 cents.
Well, I was gonna say I saw that Jody's comment, people don't know what they don't know. And I agree to that. But I also think that there has to be some natural curiosity. And when you go in your workplace, look, we spend so much time in the workplace with the people that our colleagues. And, if you do genuinely develop a relationship, albeit maybe not a friendship, but a genuineness of relationship, it seems like you would want to, seek out to learn, to genuinely want to understand more about that person. I'll give an example for myself. I had never heard of Diwali before, and I had two of my Indian coworkers who I was like, "Are you guys going to the Diwali celebration?" And I was probably pronouncing it Diwali because that's how it's spelled. But anyway, and they were like, "Oh, Diwali? No, we weren't gonna go." And I was like, "Let's go! I want to go." And I actually made them go to the celebration, and it was great. And I just was like, "Wow, this is super cool." And they were explaining different aspects of it to me. And I just was very grateful to learn because these are two guys that I actually care about, who I work with, and I think they're awesome folks. So why would I not want to celebrate with them in this and understand more about their culture? Why wouldn't I? So
No, so I love that. I do think though, like in a lot of companies, you can be working side by side with people for years and not truly know them. Some of my
right.
clients I go into, they've been working together for a decade or longer, 2 decades or longer. And I'm like, well, how much do you really know about this person? And they don't really know, and that's probably for another conversation, another show. But I think we could do if there's value in feeling connected, which I believe there is, and connected with a broad mosaic of different folks from different backgrounds and different beliefs, because that helps you navigate a world that is more complex than ever before. Then what can we do at work to get to know each other better? Because I do believe this is that if we can change how we work together, we can change how we live together, because we spend so much time at work. So some of the skills that we develop at work can really be applied when we go back to our communities.
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, with that being said, I think that is the perfect place to put a pin in this conversation for tonight. As we teed up early on that we were probably going to have another conversation, because this is one of those topics that, unfortunately, like you said, we've not progressed as much as we would have liked to. But the truth is, in the larger scheme of things, how much progress we've made. So when I think about my father and our father in 1968, integrating an athletic program and living on campus alone as a Black man in 1968, we're only 51 years out from that. Like, that's within your lifetime, right? Yeah. So we have great expectations for the last 10, 20 years. And I think that's good, and it's healthy for us to continue to have great expectations. But if we're going to make a difference, it's going to start with each and every one of us doing something different. And that's how we make a difference, and starting to put ourselves in situations where we are curious and we want to know, and we want to have greater connection, because we know that it will make our lives richer and our world better. So with that being said, we are going to sign off tonight. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Hey, sister, continue to like, follow, and share this conversation. And Michael, where can the people reach you? I'm going to type it in the chat here. Where can they reach you?
Yeah, the best place is michaelobrienshift.com. You can find me on the social media platforms there, and they can learn how to prevent a bad moment from turning into a bad day.
Yes, because Michael has a whole nother story that you guys know that we didn't even get into tonight. So he has a really, really great story. So Michael and Christina hold the line. Everybody else, thank you guys for watching tonight, and we really appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Come on, Michael. What do you always say when we close anything out?
Have fun storming the castle.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
All right, bye.